Welcome to the Confident Host podcast with me, Kay Gibbs. If you're a holiday let host or co-host looking for more bookings, more efficiencies, and to get ahead, then you are in the right place. Each episode brings you practical tips, real stories, and expert advice. On today's episode, it's me flying solo and telling you all about my Airbnb experiment. The results shocked me, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be surprised by them too. So listen in. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's podcast where I am flying solo. It's just me today. I have, of course, got my cup of tea and it's chamomile, obviously, although I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to get to drink while I'm chatting to you. Today's podcast, I am revealing a big experiment I've been carrying out. The results have really influenced how I will go forward, and I'm absolutely confident they will for you too. I've made some mistakes, I've made some wins, and I'm going to share it all with you so that you don't have to do the same thing. So over 15 months, I've been running an experiment on Airbnb with my place, The Snug. I decided to trial having 2 listings for the same space, which I hadn't done before. I'd always just had one. And I have since decided which listing to go with and got rid of the other one. So the results are really, really clear. I thought it might be a genius move. I'll explain why in a minute. But instead, it has solidified what I knew already about Airbnb's algorithm and about momentum and how it works. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. By the end, you will have come on the journey with me. It's taken me 15 months. Should take you about 20 minutes. And you will hopefully be able to take away the lesson. My place is maybe a bit unusual, but I don't think terribly uncommon in that it's got a couple of target markets. It appeals to couples all year round, but especially in the autumn and winter months for weekends and sometimes slightly longer stays. It then appeals to families because we've got a sofa bed, particularly young families in the summer holidays, and then young families throughout kind of May, June and July before it's the actual summer holidays. We get a lot of bookings for people with, toddlers and younger babies. A small subset, we do get the occasional worker or someone, a creative coming here to work, but that's minor. And so for us, that's not a target audience. But we do have 2 really quite distinct target audiences. And I often bang on about focusing on your ideal guest. You will have heard me say that before, and about the further you lean into your ideal guest, the better. And I absolutely believe that. But the challenge that presents for a host like me, and I'm sure there's many listening in a similar situation, is which one do I lean into? And can I effectively lean into different ones at different times of the year? So I thought I'd test it and see what happens. I thought Airbnb was the best place to do it because if I was to do something on Facebook and have 2 pages running and lean into different things, I felt that would be really obviously conflicting. On Airbnb, I knew I'd be able to have them set at different prices. So it would be clearly different. I'd be able to mention the sofa bed on one of them and not at all on the other one, and that could work too. So I kind of felt like it was a good place to give it a try. And so I did. My hypothesis was twofold. I thought that having 2 listings with separate target markets, both would be boosted by being more relevant. My thinking was, if I can show on the couples listing that this is absolutely perfect, it's romantic, it's idyllic, you're going to love it. And then on the family one, all the things that are representative to families, that would be a huge win. But my second hypothesis was that momentum might stall because invariably by having 2 listings, I couldn't get fully booked on either one of them. And I know that momentum is also so important on Airbnb, and I also talk about that quite a bit. So I was intrigued to see which would be the winner and which hypothesis would be right. So how I set it up. On Airbnb, you are not allowed to list the same exact product twice. You are allowed to have 2 listings or more for the same property. Some people will do it like I did, where one was listed for 2 people, no more. One was listed for 4, included the sofa bed and included some other extras that weren't there and was more expensive because it's listed for 4 people. Other people will do things like list a certain number of bedrooms in their home and then list the full house as a separate listing. That's really commonplace as well. You must make sure there is a substantive difference between the 2 spaces you're listing. You can't just do 2 for the sake of it. I named them differently. So, once I had the 2 listings, I was immediately thinking, who is my ideal guest and how am I going to focus on them? So everything from the title through to the pictures, the staging, I slightly differentiated based on who it was aimed at. And I was quite taken aback actually at how different the listings ended up looking from each other. So they had different names with the brand name plus the unique selling points for that particular audience. The families was priced a bit higher, the couples slightly lower. For us, families are still a brilliant win because they still get much better value than they would if they were booking a 2-bedroom place or 2 hotel rooms, for example. So that's one of the reasons we like to have them, because they get a good deal, but we also make better money from it. I had quite different photos. So the photos of the basic accommodation, the outside, were the same. But for the couples listing, I did wine glasses by the sunset. For the families, I did our fairy doors in our fairy trail. I showed our climbing frame. I showed that we provide little books. For the couples, I showed more walking stuff, the luxury shower. And for the couples, I didn't show the sofa bed as a sofa bed at all. I made it look almost as if you would never bring a child here. The calendars were linked. That was really easy. You could just use iCal, so that was not really an issue. And I then tracked some metrics. So I've tracked over these 15 months. It was just over 15 months, actually, that I was live. Bookings, obviously, revenue, the average nightly rate, and I tracked the reviews. Although I'm not going to mention that further because they were just all 5 stars. There's not really anything to kind of report on either one of those. The result has been surprising, although not completely, but absolutely clear. And that's my favourite thing that's come of this experiment, that the result is so definitive that I know exactly what I need to do going forward and exactly what to tell you to do too.
It's time for an ad, but the ad is actually from me. I'm here to tell you about Airbnb Accelerator, or ABBA for short, and I'm asking you to take a chance on me, see what it is there, and join me for Airbnb Accelerator in January. Now, depending on when you're listening to this, when you go to www.kaygibbs.com/ABBA, you will either come up with a sign-up sheet so that you can get on the early birds list, or you'll have a full page of info that you can actually buy and get on board. It's for you if you've been listed for a little bit and you feel like it's time to optimize your listing. Maybe you've lost momentum. Maybe you go on there and make changes and you just don't really know why you're making them and what you're doing. We're going to give you purpose. We're going to give you confidence. We're going to take every element of your listing and upgrade it, not just now when we do it, but so that you'll know what to do going forward too, and you'll understand why you're doing it. My coaching groups are transformative. And you will not only gain confidence, but bookings. And once your first one's in, you've covered the investment. Airbnb Accelerator. You bring the listing, I'll bring the plan.
So the winner by a mile was the family listing. Now, I was surprised by that because although families were and continue to be one of our 2 main target audiences, more bookings every year we've been operating have come from couples. So that was a shock that the family listing outperformed. And I'm going to dig in a bit and explain to you exactly what's happened here, because I think it is really interesting. So the family listing achieved bookings. But what's key is the family listing didn't just achieve bookings for families, which it did better. So we achieved about 10% more revenue over as an average per night compared to what we typically would from families. But we also achieved a few more bookings, but not markedly. It's a small data set, so I wouldn't say that's significant really. But what was significant was that couples booked the family listing. And this really shocked me because you'll recall the family listing was more expensive. And how I've done it historically is had the one listing and had the additional fee for more people. Now, I find this one of the things on Airbnb that's a bit clunky because you can add an additional fee for more people, but it has to be per night, which is a bit annoying. Really, I would like to be able to add an additional fee just as a flat rate, basically just to cover me getting the sofa bed and the high chair and stuff out, and the extra cleaning that there invariably is when there's toddlers. I speak as a toddler mum. But what you can't do is just add that flat fee. So one of the reasons I thought it might work is because it would enable me to offer better value to both parties. But the biggest shock that came was that there were couples choosing to pay more. Now, I'm going to just really lay out what I mean. When I went on to search for us, to start with, when I first started with the 2 listings, they were both visible in the first 2 pages of searches, which is where I try to stay on the first page, but I'm happy with the first 2 pages. That does okay by me. And they were both there. So I don't know. I should have written it down when it slipped. Maybe 3 months, something like that. And then the couples one slipped. But I thought, oh, okay, it'll come back up because we're going into winter. It'll be fine. You know, the couples will start to book. And throughout the experiment, I did get bookings from the couples listing, which is interesting because it was slipping further and further down. Despite that, I did get some bookings, but not many. But here's what happened. This is the most important bit. I had a number. So we're not talking 2 or 3. We're talking a number. I think it was 7 of individuals and couples book the family listing even though it was more expensive and even though both were available, both were listed on Airbnb. So Airbnb had decided that my family listing was better, was making sales for them, and therefore they were putting it at the top of the listings. And people, because you can't search by price, people were booking that one that came up and not looking further down to find the exact same property for for a weekend, it was something like 40, 50 quid cheaper, which I was astonished by. So momentum trumps everything. Momentum trumps ideal guest. It trumps price. If Airbnb has decided that your listing is a win and it puts you on that front page, people just take that. They'll take that you're on the front page. The algorithm clearly treated them both differently. And so one lost ground. And once the couples one had lost ground, it just kept losing ground and slipping further and further away. And I got fewer bookings from it. It has shocked me that couples and even solos booked the family listing and paid more rather than scrolling for cheaper couple ones. I'm much tighter than that. I will always look and see. But that has been the biggest lesson really for me in this. So the lessons are that momentum is king. We know the algorithm will reward listings that make them money. There's no kind of mystical beast that is up against you in terms of the algorithm. If you are making Airbnb money, it will continue to promote you and show you to people so that you continue to make it money. And the one of my listings was making it money, one was not, and that was really, really obvious, the impact of that. The other lesson is simply that momentum trumps price. If you can have a really effective listing on Airbnb and you can stay in that top section, even if you are 10, 20, even 30% more expensive than some of the other listings, if you're in that first 10 listings, you will get bookings. And so that is utterly critical because that teaches us that by optimizing our listings, we can make more money from the same bookings. And people will often say to me, oh, I need more bookings. Shall I reduce my price? Well, this just showed that price just was not relevant in this instance. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I'd made it double or triple, I'm sure that would have had a bearing on it. But it shows that price is not the most critical thing. Momentum is, and having positive guest experiences, positive reviews, and achieving bookings is what counts. It also taught me that it's important to lean into your most lucrative guest type. So this year has proven we've got higher revenue from slightly fewer nights, actually. And because we've got higher revenue, I don't resent cleaning fingerprints off the walls and I don't resent bringing the high chair down from the loft, because the revenue's there. It's been easy to charge that amount rather than have the extra bit and feel a bit uncomfortable. That it's just worked really well. So I won't be changing that. Perhaps the second biggest shock for me after the cost thing is that I thought couples might be put off by the family positioning. And maybe some were, but certainly some weren't. And so that's something to be less afraid of. Often when I talk about leaning into your ideal guest, I'll say the phrase, this does not mean you're not going to appeal to anyone else, but it's just prioritizing. And I can say that with more conviction than ever before, because that was really clear that came out of this. And essentially, the most direct lesson is having 2 listings was not worth it in this instance. And I think I would struggle to see a time where it would be, because I think the compromise in momentum would be too great to make it worth whatever difference you could achieve by having 2 listings. So I'm fascinated to hear if you've got 2 listings and it works well for you, or if perhaps listening to this, you're thinking, yeah, we've lost momentum and that's what makes it really difficult. Going forward, clearly I'll have the 1 listing. I will continue with some higher rates. And I'm going to vary my ideal guest focus a little bit through the year. But because I've learned that the family friendliness doesn't preclude couples from booking, I'm not going to worry too much about it. We did still not have families booking in the winter. That didn't happen. So I'm going to take a kind of approach that autumn and winter, I will be adjusting my photos and slightly adjusting my messaging and the language that I'm using to appeal more to those couples and solo holidaymakers. And then come kind of March time, I will up the ante on my ideal guest focus being absolutely those young families. And I'll probably lean in even heavily. Now I know how successful it's been, because I think the learning here, and perhaps this is particular to these specific groups, is that if you are a young family, you really are looking for particular things to make it work with the kids. Whereas I think if you're a couple, you can look at a listing that's aimed at pretty much anyone and make it work for you. So I think couples are perhaps uniquely flexible in what they're looking for, so we can afford to focus on the other, the more lucrative, or the other that isn't couples. That's certainly what I'm going to be doing, and then kind of slightly adjusting that for the winter months. I lost momentum. And so with that listing, actually, I've got rid of the listing. I'm not using it anymore. And I will now lean fully into my family one and increase the momentum there, because I'll now be channeling both sets of bookings through that one listing. But you can lose momentum. It can happen for all sorts of reasons. It can be that you've got a long booking, that you are doing really well with direct bookings or bookings from an agent. And so you don't have much availability on Airbnb. So that can cause you a problem. It can be all manner of things. But it can be recovered, but it needs a bit of focus. And I often work with people on this. It might be that you have to make some temporary compromises, possibly in price, although I don't think that's a priority, often with minimum stay and just the way you're presenting it. You really need to optimize things so that you can get back in Airbnb's good books. And by good books, again, I'm not meaning some mystical thing. It just means making them money. As soon as you're making them money and you're making yourself money, you will then get back to having momentum, to being at the top of the rankings and winning. So if you're a bit stuck and you've had a go at momentum and it's not working for you, or if for any other reason you want some eyes over your Airbnb listing, I've got a couple of packages that I do that could work for you. Lots of the time people just need a strategy call, so that's where we'll chat through where you're up to and what's next. I do full listing reviews, and that's what I'd recommend if you're really feeling like you don't know where to start with your listing. But I've got something really exciting coming up, folks. At the beginning of 2026, I'm going to be doing, for the very first time, Airbnb Accelerator, which is going to be a coaching group in which I don't just say to you, this is what you need to do. I hold your hand, we do it together, and I give you the resources. So if you've got an Airbnb listing that you don't think is perfect, that you want to optimize, that you want to absolutely make the most of, because as I've learned through this experiment, you could be making even better money there than you are per night already. If you want to optimize that listing, then Airbnb Accelerator is for you. It's going to run with a similar structure to Facebook Fix that you'll have seen the amazing reviews for. We're going to have weekly training, actions to take, a community, and we're going to get it done. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. This experiment has taught me a lot and allowed me to understand even better exactly how Airbnb works and how I can best support you to maximize how you use it too. I haven't managed to drink any of my tea, so I'd better go away and finish my tea, hadn't I? And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to the Confident Host podcast with me, Kay Gibbs. You can find more episodes wherever you normally get your podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and share away with fellow hosts. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I can usually be found, and also on Instagram for lots more tips and discussion. And if you would like to take your hosting journey further, join me in Confident Host Circle, my membership that brings you consistency, confidence, and community while you grow your business. Next time, I'll be flying solo and talking Airbnb listings and 5 tips and some myth busting, all about how to get your listing working optimally for you. See you next time.